Hello. Well, good afternoon. I am Larissa Huff, the social media and communications manager at the Wharton Esherick Museum, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's Spotlight Talk. As far as housekeeping stuff goes, we're all just going to stay on mute while Andy and Ethan chat about preservation. And if you have any questions throughout, you can drop them in the chat or you can hang on to them. And at the end, we'll have some time to unmute and have a little Q&A and a chat and ask Andy about all of his fun knowledge. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ethan so we can jump right in.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Ethan Snyder. I'm our Manager of Collections and Public Programs here at the Wharton Esherick Museum. And we're going to be chatting today with Andy Gustine, our Building Preservation Specialist, who is going to talk to us about this kind of long-running issue that we've had on Wharton Esherick's 1966 silo that we're actually starting to move forward with in a really exciting way. So, Andy, I'll just start with a few questions and we can talk through them. So for people who might not be familiar with the 1966 part of Wharton Esherick Studio, do you want to give us some background on the structure?
Sure. Can you see the image, everybody? Do I have to do anything to share it? No, it's up. All right, good. The what we call the silo structure, the last part of Esherick's home and studio was built in 1965, 66. And it is it's uniquely untraditional compared to every other part of the studio. Esherick started out with a very traditional stone and gable roofed structure, added some wood sided, again, still sloping roof, projecting eaves. And then the last part he put on was this concrete block, monolithic stucco cladding with an integral, fresco mural, a roof that's flat and concealed behind the parapet walls. So it's totally different from the rest of the studio. It's totally different from the other buildings on the site. And the consequences of some of these choices have made it really our most difficult conservation challenge.
Yeah. So do you want to tell us a little bit about some previous preservation campaigns that have gone on before we talk about the current issue?
Yep. We know, let's see if I can get the next slide. We know from the conservation manual and from some of the information that we have in the documents we have that we know that it was built of concrete block, and we know that by the time Bob wrote the conservation manual in the 1980s, they were already talking of problems in the previous decade with condensation on the walls of the dressing room, which is the room directly above the kitchen. Let's scroll back. So, the kitchen being in here. Can you guys see my pointer when I do that?
We can see.
And then the dressing room is the room right above. Most visitors to the studio never get up into the dressing room, but you do walk through and visit the kitchen. So there were condensation issues above the kitchen, and there was also issues with chalking and some kinds of spalling going on in the exterior. So a couple things were done at the time, and then kind of ongoing issues were mitigated with these clear masonry sealers on the exterior, trying to reduce the amount of water that was penetrating the wall. And upstairs in the dressing room, they actually added an inch of foam, rigid foam insulation, and then replastered over top of that to match the original green tinted plaster finish.
Yeah, so do you want to tell us a little bit about what all of this actually looks like and what it means for what's going on today?
Yes. If you've been through the studio, you likely have noticed, damage to the black tinted plaster in the kitchen. The earliest image we can find of that is in 2003. You can see some of the beginnings of that damage on the walls in the kitchen above the refrigerator. By 2018, things were getting, consistently worse. But really, it's in the last 5 years. In 2018, we installed a new HVAC system. It vastly improved our ability to control the humidity inside the studio, and it's quite likely that partly because of that, we've had more damage on the wall since. So between 2018 and this past year, things have really accelerated. And it's been top of our mind in the last few years to try to figure out what's going on and see if there's something we can do about it. Rather than sort of haphazardly just trying something else, as has been done in the past, we really wanted to try to assemble a team of experts in this world and see if we could really understand what was going on before we tried to find a solution to it.
Yeah. So wait, before we move forward with what the investigation, how that went and what it turned up, I'm curious, we didn't really talk about this in preparing, but do you have an idea as to why the insulation was added? Was that related to a conservation issue, or was that just trying to fix, a cold room, or what was going on there?
The only thing we had to go on is that description in the manual, which says condensation on the walls. There's a bathroom adjacent to that room. If someone's living in there, it's an uninsulated masonry wall. You take a shower. It's no surprise that would be that you would have condensation on those walls in there. Insulating the wall solves that problem, but it didn't really take into account the fact that it might, exacerbate other problems. So,
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so you want to tell us a little bit about this BCA investigation and who BCA is?
sure. We again wanted to really put together a team of experts in the field. Our first contact was Michael Henry, who is a conservation engineer. He's been involved with the studio in the past through the University of Pennsylvania, where he teaches some classes. And he brought on a team of conservators to work with him from Building Conservation Associates. They came out and actually did the investigative work on site and collaborated with him on interpreting the results. So Marlene and Preston were here for 2 different days, different weather conditions, did a lot of probing around. They also went through all of our documentation of the building, and yeah, we poked some holes to confirm the structure and the materials involved. They did some sampling, did some lab testing, and provided a very detailed report that gives us a lot of insight on what's going on and what to do next.
Great. So you want to show us what they did? I think you have
Sure.
some great photos to share with us.
Yeah. So I was able to kind of tag along and help and facilitate. A lot of the images you're going to see going forward are pulled right from the report that we received from them. This one just annotates sort of where things are on the interior. The green lines refer to the floor level, or the ceiling of the kitchen, which is the floor of the dressing room above. This is the ceiling of the dressing room. These red lines relate to the largest cracks in the exterior, and they are horizontal and run along the masonry joints of some of the concrete blocks in the wall. The blue shaded areas refer to the actual plaster damage that we see on the inside. Most of that being, at or below that floor ceiling level.
Mm-hmm. So we're also seeing a little bit of plaster damage below that upper green line too, correct?
Yes. What we see up there isn't anything like what you see in the kitchen. A lot of it looks like it's kind of old, but there are some damaged areas upstairs as well. Yeah. So we again, they did most of this. I was kind of helping get them into position, etc. But in areas that were already damaged, both on the interior and the exterior, so they didn't dig holes in the existing intact areas of the mural, but in damaged areas they cut out some of the stucco layers to take samples, and also just burrowed into the wall to determine the depth of the stucco, the composition of the block, and just to confirm the dimensions of the block, and also to see if the block was hollow or poured solid during construction, which is commonly done, both on the inside or on the exterior, but also on the interior. Here you can see this is up in the dressing room. The wood floor is here. They carved into that wall where there was some damage. So moving from the inside of the wall out, this dark area is the cinder block. This sort of buff area is like the undercoat of the original plaster layer, the green tint of the original surface of the plaster. This blue is the foam board that was installed on top, wire mesh to support the next coatings of plaster, and then this is the plaster finish that we see now that was replicating the original.
So that blue is what the issue is, right?
That blue is again, it's kind of exacerbated some of the problems that already existed. Yes. They took some samples of the masonry that included the salts that were crystallizing on the interior. So these are 3 different stucco samples, and analyzed that to confirm what seemed pretty obvious, but that the salts that are efflorescing on the wall on the interior are actually dissolved by exterior water making its way through the structure of the wall, dissolving some of the salts that are inherent to masonry materials. And then when that water evaporates on the surface of the interior of the wall, those salts recrystallize, expand, and slowly kind of blow apart the interior plaster. I created a couple of sketches to try to give you a peek into the wall. These are the concrete blocks. Again, they have a hollow core. In this case, we were able to determine they were not filled with masonry, with concrete, but they were filled with a loose vermiculite insulation, sort of, it's like little pebbles almost, but it's very lightweight. You might have seen it in flower pots. It's like a common in planting to like loosen the soil. but nothing that structurally improves the wall. We see horizontal cracks on the exterior because they are along these mortar joints in the wall. It's a likely pathway for water to pass all the way through the wall to the interior. And here's sort of a detail depicting that. If this wall gets soaked by rain, and we have a crack on that mortar joint, that crack could likely go all the way through the wall. The water can follow that crack. It gets to the interior in the dressing room level, hits the foam, which is impermeable, and works its way back down, and now is kind of a concentrated amount of water that all comes out right below the ceiling in the kitchen. So this is sort of the explanation for why things look so bad in the kitchen and not so bad directly above in the dressing room.
It's a great visual. Thank you for preparing that, Andy.
Sure.
Yeah, so what's next for the silo?
So the recommendations by BCA were that to try to repair some of the cracks on the exterior. So we're going to hire, I believe, another conservative this year who kind of specializes in this kind of treatment, and can not just effectively fill the cracks and seal up their capacity to absorb that water, but also do it in a way that isn't, that's as unobtrusive outside on the exterior as possible. So these will be people that are not only going to fill this with the right material, but also be able to probably in paint with some masonry paints to make it all as visible as possible. We're also going to, at their recommendation, remove the plaster and insulation on the dressing room level. We won't, at this point, do any repairs to any of the existing plaster damage. We're going to leave everything open, monitor for the next 6 months to a year after these repairs are done on the outside, and in hopes that we'll see a reduction in that moisture getting in and the damage it's causing. And then, if we can get a hold of that, get a handle on all that, maybe in the following years, start doing some repairs in the kitchen.
Great. I think you had a couple more slides to show us if you want to walk us through them.
Actually, that's it.
Oh, you cut out okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah. All right, fantastic. Well, we can open this up for questions. And I already see that someone dropped a question in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, so Bonnie was wondering, is this work in the kitchen making it so that space might not be available for tours?
Not in the short term, no. So really, there'll be no work done in the kitchen proper or anywhere on the interior. That's part of tours. The only work on the interior will be above in the dressing room, which is kind of staff space anyway right now. So, and everything else will be outside. We'll be doing that from a lift, and trying to do it on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, not tour days. So at this point, none of the work should impede anybody's experience on the tour.
That's great to know.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask questions, now's the time.
Hi, this is Mark Koshard. One of the things, I've been in construction for 45 years and restored a number of buildings, lots of masonry restoration. Question I have, are they considering cutting in any control joints into the stucco to kind of alleviate some of the cracking issues in the stucco and have them localized in a spot where they can be caulked and monitored as far as allowing penetration of water in through the block?
It's a great question. If we weren't if we were dealing with a sort of ordinary stucco building, absolutely, that's the answer. Unfortunately, we're dealing with a stucco surface. It's also a work of art. So while we aren't going to, we won't be creating control joints. These the repair materials they're using are flexible. They're not going to be rigid materials. So in a sense, we're using the control joints that have created themselves, and those will have to be probably continuously monitored over time, and repaired, refilled. We're not sure what the time span will be. There may well be other cracks that form as well. So it's just a very difficult situation when you have this work of art. It reminds me of, if anybody, if you're not aware of it, look up the Guggenheim Museum, Frank Lloyd Wright's building in New York. Totally different concept, but Wright conceived of that as a monolithic stucco exterior, and didn't install any control joints, and and it was a disaster. But when that building was preserved and conserved, that was a huge struggle, how to achieve the artistic intent without in a building that really, with a material that isn't designed to do that. So great question. Don't really have a better answer than that for you.
No, thank you. Stucco is always got a water problem, and that. I know that. Buildings know that, and it's probably the biggest problem with that material is that it is prone to leakage. When Larry Litt was still on the board, he sent me the drawings for the caretaker's quarters to do a peer review on the design, and I sent it off to some of my masonry contractor friends, and the first thing he came back was, get rid of the stucco.
Yeah,
that's what the answer was. Like this is the biggest problem you're going to have is that stucco not being able to withstand water penetration. So thank you for that.
Sure. Thanks for your question.
Hi, Andy. It's Paul Eisenhower.
Hi, Paul.
How you doing?
Good.
Two questions. One, in the past, there had been some sinking of the silo. Has that continued, or did what they did way back when stabilize it? And is that a contributing factor in what's happening with the mortar? And the second question is, the mural is eroding, and is there talk or plans for restoring that in any way?
So the first question, the settlement seems pretty stable. Does it have anything to do with some of the cracking? It certainly could. I think it's hard to know for sure. But I think primarily what we're looking at on the exterior of those cracks, it's indicative of just water penetration and deteriorating of a stucco wall without any settlement. So, and then I forgot your second question. Remind me.
Are there any plans for restoring the mural?
Right. All right. The erosion.
Yeah.
There aren't. I think we're taking one step at a time here. One thing that I think one thing that has always been a curiosity to me, and I think to a lot of people, is, we kind of have always been told this was a mural, a fresco. In other words, the pigment was added to the actual surface of the stucco, rather than some kind of a wash, that went on to the cured stucco. From some of the sampling and some of what we looked at, it is pretty clear that it is actually, the technique was like a fresco, which at least gives us the information that that pigmented surface is a little deeper than it would have been if it was sort of a wash of some kind. Really, I think what we've been talking about, Paul, more that kind of relates to your question is, would it be possible to clean the existing stucco? Because although there is certainly some erosion and deterioration of that surface, what's obscuring the mural more than anything is just the dirt, the mold, the whatever, that sort of darkening of the surfaces. And you can even see in this image that the sort of light cracking, it looks like little cracks. They aren't cracks, but these are areas where that dirty surface has kind of eroded away. And so we didn't really get into this in this phase, but I am curious, and all of us are curious about what kind of approach we might be able to take in the future to kind of clean the surface and, allow us to actually see the real mural, which is under there. But as far as deterioration of the actual mural itself, I don't think that's an immediate issue. So we're kicking that one down the road.
Thanks, Andy.
Sure.
All right, so do we have any other questions? All right, well, you can always feel free to follow up with an email if you have questions or you want to learn more. Andy, thank you so much for this wonderful and really, really interesting and fascinating conversation. Sure. Before we let everyone go, I just want to let you know that we'll be following up with an email where you can view the recording on our YouTube page. And then also I wanted to make a couple of announcements for some exciting events coming up at the museum. So the first one is that our second iteration of the book club is taking place next Wednesday on, I think it's May 8th. We're going to be talking about Sister Carrie, written by Theodore Dreiser, Wharton Esherick's good friend. And then looking towards the end of the month, we have got, let me see, we have another book club meeting at the beginning of June, which is going to be the 12th. We're going to be reading a recent biography of Lou Kahn called You Say to Brick. And then later in June, we are going to be having a concert, which is going to be, Larissa, can you remind me? I just don't have it pulled up right here. Oh, it's June 9th, which is a Sunday in the afternoon. And then on June 21st, we're going to be doing our second solstice evening with Dr. Tom Geiler from the Oneida Community Mansion House, who will be chatting with us about the broader context of intentional living during the Esherick family's years. Yeah, so stay tuned on our website, social media, e-news.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Look out for that follow-up email, which will have links to all the events that Ethan just listed, so you can sign up right from that email. And otherwise, we will see you at the next virtual meeting. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Larissa.
Thank you. Thanks for all your efforts.